Hey, I'm Wendy, and this is my series, Love, Loss, and Lipstick, every Wednesday while I get ready for work, telling my love story. I move it over to my YouTube channel, usually at the end of the week or so, because Facebook will delete this, and so that's why if you watch on YouTube, it's not the right format, because this is always recorded live on Facebook while I get ready for work. And when I'm done putting my makeup on, then I'll be done for today. If you were here last week, Steve and I went to some marriage counseling, and it was really worth every penny. I highly recommend it, especially newlyweds. But we came up to our 1-year anniversary, and tumultuous might be a good word that first year. I know they say the first year is hard, and it was very challenging, but we got through it. And we were wanting to take the honeymoon that we never went on for our anniversary. We didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of time to take off work. And in California, there's a little weekend cruise. I don't know if it's still around, but back in the day, it was called the Azure Seas, and it left out of San Pedro, which is just right outside of Los Angeles, and it went to Baja California, a peninsula just right down below San Diego, which is considered Mexico, but it stopped at Catalina Island, which when I was growing up, my family had a boat. My dad loved boating, and we used to go to Catalina regularly for all of the holiday weekends and long weekends. And I hadn't been there since I was a kid, but that was the first stop. So we were gonna go exploring there. But this was, even though it's called Baja California, it is Mexico, so we were going out of the country. And we read through all the paperwork and everything that you needed. And it was really pretty easy back then to go to Mexico. You didn't have to have a passport. It said if you were a US or Canadian citizen, which is what Steve was, that all you needed was a birth certificate and or a driver's license. Really easy. So we packed up our paperwork, and we went. I feel like I have something in my eye. Anyways, we were going through the check-in process, and all they asked for was our driver's license. Super simple, except for my husband said, "Oh, don't you need to see our birth certificates?" And he hands the lady our birth certificates, and she's like, "Oh, okay." Handed him back. And off we went to start this year later honeymoon. We had a great day on Catalina Island. We did some hiking and shopping. There's a little beach. Really quaint. It hadn't changed that much in all the years. I don't know anybody who's been there lately. I don't know what it's like now, but had a great day. So we didn't know anybody, of course, on the ship. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, where you kind of keep running into the same people all the time. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of people on the cruise ship, but there was this one couple that we kept seeing everywhere we went. And it was almost comical. And then the guys struck up a conversation, and my husband actually had said he thought that he just looked like he worked in television or in production. I guess there's a look. And so he asked him, or they asked each other, "Hey, do you work in TV?" I was like, "Oh yeah." So it was like this instant friendship. And he and his wife were really great, very nice couple. And we spent a lot of time with them. We went to Ensenada and we did some sightseeing, and we hung out with them, and it was really fun. And it was just a long weekend cruise. So before we knew it, you know, we were heading back to the port in Los Angeles. The embarking, or whatever they call it, when you to leave the ship, you know, there's a whole process. And so we had to have our bags and everything packed. And outside the door, they would come get them and unload everything. And so we were sitting and waiting in like this lounge area with our friends, our new friends that we made, hanging out. And then they said something over the loudspeaker, and we were really only halfway listening, but it sounded like they said Steve Angus. And we're like, why would they be calling your name? Along with the crew. And so, you know, we were confused. So Steve went up to somebody that worked on the ship and asked, you know, he said, I think I heard my name being called. And they're like, yeah, you need to report to immigration with the crew from the ship. And we were like, okay. He wouldn't be allowed to get off the ship until he cleared immigration. They wouldn't let me go with him. So I left. I mean, I got off the boat and sat and waited and waited and waited and waited. They do like an interrogation, and they asked him if he was in the United States legally. And he said, I believe so. I mean, his parents brought him when he was like 8 years old. He's like, you know, he didn't want to say yes and be lying if he didn't know for sure, but he didn't want to say no and be deported. But anyway, so he said, I believe so. And thank goodness he did, because that was the right answer, to not have him immediately be sent to Canada. Like he didn't even know anybody there. And so they ended up, they let him off, but he had an appointment already scheduled at immigration, INS, in Los Angeles. So we talked to an immigration attorney. I mean, it was the craziest thing. He had a social security card, social security number. He'd been paying taxes his whole adult life. And we just didn't really understand what the deal was. And he just didn't know. I mean, he just never knew that there was anything he needed to do once he grew up. His dad passed away. He asked his mom after that ordeal, you know, he's like, what the heck? And she said that she became a citizen when President Reagan did a amnesty program in the 80s. It was only a few years before this happened. I think it was like 1986 or something. So his mom was a citizen. And my husband was an illegal alien, apparently. So the attorney told us that when we went, to bring as much proof as possible that it wasn't a marriage of convenience, that we were really married. So we had the title to our house that had both of our names on it. We had bills that had both of our names. We brought our wedding album. I mean, we had a big, huge wedding. It wasn't just, you know, like the courthouse. We legit were married. The lawyer told us that they probably would interview us separately to make sure our stories matched. So we weren't really worried about that. We had the same story. And the day that we had to go down, Steve asked my mom to go with us, because he said, if I get deported, I don't want Wendy to be by herself and have to drive home by herself. So, you know, he was always very thoughtful. But it was like, I mean, what the heck? We go down there, And you know those like kids books and puzzles and things, and there's always that one like, what doesn't belong? I mean, there was nobody, downtown Los Angeles, INS, there was nobody that looked like me and Steve there. Yeah, my mom. There weren't a lot of Canadian citizens sitting in downtown Los Angeles. We got through it, went through the interview. The guy we had was great. He knew, I mean, it was legit. And so that started the process for Steve to have a green card. And that was a souvenir from our so-called honeymoon. So things had gotten better between us. Everything was good, and we really did. We had a good time, and we stayed in touch with our friends that we made. They lived in Manhattan Beach, and they even had us over for dinner one time. They were kind of in a different place in their lives than we were. They were a little bit older than we were, and they had older kids, older like 12 and 15. And of course we didn't have any yet, but it was really nice. And Steve actually did business a few times with him in the future. So that was really cool how we met. But so we were back, and on our actual real day of our anniversary, we went over to my mom's to have our wedding cake that Steve didn't like on the day of our wedding. And so after it had been in the freezer for a year, he really wasn't looking forward to taking a bite. But he, you know, for the sake of getting a photo, he took a bite of year-old wedding cake. And it was all good. He ended up taking a job at a place called Advanced Video and Film. And it was in Orange County. It was in the Anaheim area. It was probably about 40 minutes from where we lived. But he had been freelance, and it was hard and it was stressful. And so this, you know, would be a little bit more secure, we felt like. So he went ahead and started a job. Where we lived, we really liked, the neighborhood was really nice. It was in Azusa. Parts of Azusa can be a little sketchy, but where we were living, we felt really safe. And we had the young couple that lived next door. He was actually a police officer. And then there was this older lady that lived across the street who had been friends with the prior owners of our house. And she was very nice. She had a son, a grown adult son who lived with her. And he gave me kind of an ick vibe. And not to be mean or judgmental or anything, but I don't know, I wasn't too crazy about him. And on Halloween, I didn't know what to expect as far as how many kids would be coming. And there was a lot. We had all these trick-or-treaters. So I ran out of candy by like 8 o'clock. So I turned off the light. Of course, Steve was working, so I was home by myself. Now I'm watching TV, and like at 9 o'clock, somebody knocks on my door, and I thought, I mean, are the kids still out? The lights off? Why are they knocking on my door? But anyways, I opened the door, and it was the creepy guy from across the street. And so it really surprised me. And I'm like, oh, hey. And he said, did you run out of candy? And I said, yeah, I did. And he said, yeah, we did too. So here's a bag of pennies that you can have if you want to hand pennies out. And I thought, no, I'm done for the night. You know, it's late enough. And I said, I'm not going to hand out any more candy, and I'm not going to hand out pennies, but, you know, thank you so much. Have a good night. And he was like trying to start a conversation, and I was just really kind of short, and say goodnight and lock the door. That was really the only encounter I ever had with him. And so it wasn't too much later after that. Steve was at his new job, like 45 minutes away or 40 minutes away. I was at work, and he called me at noon, I mean, in the middle of the day. We didn't have cell phones, So he called the front desk of the salon and, asked to talk to me. And that surprised me. But anyway, so I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? And he said, well, I got this really weird feeling when I was at work that I just needed to come home. And I'm like, oh, in the middle of the day. But he did have a crazy intuition. And so sure enough, he drove home. He told his boss, he goes, I got to go. I just feel like I got to go. And he got home to our house, and the front door was wide open, and we'd been robbed. I don't know if it was the creepy guy across the street. I don't know. We never found out. Nobody saw anything. The cop next door, he's like, man, I was home cleaning my gun. I would have loved to have caught somebody in the act. But nobody saw anything. But Steve immediately went to the phone to call me, and the phone was gone. We had a phone with like an answering machine. So the phone was gone. One of them in the house was still there. And my first thing, I'm like, did they take all the wedding gifts? Because we still had in our guest room, we still like all the china and crystal, the things that we weren't really using, were still in the boxes. He's like, I don't know, I'll go look. And so he goes and looks. And of course, the phones have a cord. I'll be right back. I'll go look. And then he's like, it looks like everything is still there. And so it turns out they stole jewelry, which sucked. Of course, I was wearing my wedding ring, stuff like that. He had some stuff they took. I had some stuff they took. They took food out of the fridge. And some of Steve's clothes. So I'm guessing it was a guy. And they stole all of his socks, because apparently socks are a popular place that people hide cash. Didn't know that. There was no cash in the socks, and now there were no socks. So that happened. I'm done. Setting spray on these hot days, let me tell you, if your makeup is sweating and slipping off your face and melting, this is like an essential. But regardless, I'm off to work. I hope you all have a great day, and thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Bye.